Hello, jet setters, or should I say rail runners. I'm Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com, and I've come to Chicago's historic Union Station to try out one of America's most epic rail journeys. It's the Empire Builder from here in Chicago all the way to Seattle.
The train crosses some of the most dramatic land in the United States, passing through Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, and Washington State. The entire route takes 46 hours at an average speed of 50 miles per hour. But our plan was to leave Chicago at 2:15 on Thursday afternoon, spend 30 hours in a luxurious bedroom, and arrive just as the sun sets over Glacier National Park at 8:30 on Friday evening. This would be my first experience on board an overnight train. Keep watching to see what it's like to travel on this train during these unprecedented times. Learn a little bit of the history behind this remarkable route, and perhaps best of all, witness some of the spectacular sights along the way. This is the Empire Builder. The trip begins at Chicago's Union Station, nestled right in the heart of the city. The historic building opened in 1925, and if you listen very carefully, you can still hear the roaring 20s in the background. Union Station is one of the most common names for train stations here in the U.S. There are examples in Washington, Seattle, Los Angeles, and of course here in Chicago. But why is that? Well, it turns out that stations that were used by multiple railroad companies were often called Union. In its heyday, this architectural gem served 6 or 7 different rail companies. Today, the station serves Metra, local rail services, a number of bus lines, and of course, Amtrak. Passengers staying in a sleeper car, that's a roomette or a bedroom, have access to the Metropolitan Lounge. I'm sorry to say it was a bit disappointing. In normal times, snacks and drinks would be available. These, of course, are anything but normal times. All of those amenities have been, understandably, removed. The seating, however, was plentiful, at least in the morning. The space filled up later in the day, since most of the trains leave at mid-afternoon. Even though ours wasn't scheduled to head out until 2:15, we arrived at about 11 o'clock. There was even space reserved for kids. The TVs, interestingly, were showing Law & Order reruns. Face coverings were required in the lounge, and Amtrak employees seemed serious about enforcing the rule. Passengers were encouraged to be in the lounge 45 minutes before departure. An announcement came for us to line up and head to our train about 30 minutes before we were scheduled to leave Chicago. The boarding procedure from the lounge was interesting. Granted, this was my first overnight train, but I've never seen anything quite like it. We were told to line up along a hallway. Naturally, I ran to the hallway in order to be at the front of the line. We were then met by an Amtrak employee who would escort us to the train. I thought I'd been very clever by rushing to get to the front of the line in this hallway, but in a twist of fate I couldn't have predicted, and with a maneuver I still don't quite understand, I ended up here at the very back of the line. Oh well, boarding anything is exciting for me, especially my first overnight train. I really wasn't sure what to expect. Keep watching for all the details.
This is pretty exciting. This is getting pretty exciting.
If you like travel videos like this one, I sure hope you'll click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can be among the first to know when I publish a new video. What a sense of occasion this was, a really exciting travel moment. In addition to a backpack, I brought a normal carry-on sized bag with me. It was too large to keep in our room, but there was plenty of storage right here. And I felt very safe leaving for the 30-hour journey that was ahead of us. Our bedroom was located upstairs, and we'd been directed to it by our cabin attendant who waited for us just outside the car. We barely had time to sit down before that incredible cabin attendant came by to offer a tour of the room. This guy was awesome. I don't film crew in my videos because it just seems kind of rude, so I'll give you my own tour in just a few minutes. But he was awesome, friendly, accommodating, and proactive. What a guy. Only a matter of seconds after he'd finished, we were on our way, right on time. As we pulled away from Chicago, I began to relax. We followed the Chicago River for a little bit, and soon we saw the skyline fading away. For the first time in a long time, I did not envy the passengers on that plane up there. Instead, I was ready for a different pace. There was something incredibly soothing about the motion of the train, the gentle sway of the car. Plus, having everything easily accessible in our own cabin was a real luxury. This was a small indication of just how relaxing this trip would be. We only spent one night on the train and another 2 in Glacier National Park, but spoiler alert, thanks to the pace of the train, the trip felt like it lasted 2 weeks, and I mean that in the best possible way. I was so refreshed after this short trip. What a great way to travel. The bedroom we'd booked was comfortable. There's a door and a curtain to block the hallway. There's a small closet, big enough for a jacket. The lighting controls and call button were right here. This sofa was comfortable and would eventually fold into a bed. The room came with tissues and 4 pillows. Although I'd recommend bringing your own pillow. I'm not too proud to admit it. My neck kind of still hurts from these. Oh well. There's more lighting and a plug that would not accommodate my MacBook plug. There's a table that folds out here. It was great for playing cards, getting some work done, or enjoying room service. More on that later. All of these activities are made possible for 2 thanks to this chair, which faces the sofa. The room is also equipped with a sink, soap, plenty of towels, and rolled gold these days, extra toilet paper. There's also a toilet and a shower that are in the same room. The same room.
The shower and the toilet are the same?
Just kidding. Downstairs, you'll find plenty of storage, along with shared bathrooms and showers that are much larger than the ones upstairs. It was time to head to the observation car to take in views of Milwaukee. As you can see, social distancing was enforced throughout the train. We passed the Milwaukee Airport Railroad Station. It's an Amtrak railway station and opened in 2005. It provides access to the Mitchell International Airport, which is named for General Billy Mitchell, who's widely regarded as the father of the United States Air Force. But the Empire Builder doesn't stop there. Instead, we pulled into downtown Milwaukee. Now, if you decide to stay here, don't miss the cheese curds. There are 2 kinds of stops on the Empire Builder. Most are like this one, just real quick so passengers can get on and off. The second type are longer, so-called smoke breaks. They last about 20 minutes. In those cases, passengers can get out and stretch their legs, but it's a good idea to stay around the station and wander too far. There are lots of stories of passengers getting left behind. There was something incredibly comforting about being on the train during a rainstorm, which was good because it rained a lot on this trip. Soon, though, it was time to head back to our room. Get ready for dinner.
We've got a dinner reservation in just a few minutes. I honestly have no idea what to expect. So we'll make our way up to the dining car. I know this is a different sort of experience, different service than you'd normally receive because of the coronavirus and so forth. So a little bit different, but hope you'll check it out with us.
As we make our way up there, let's take a look around the train. It was made up of 2 engines and 10 cars. There were 4 sleeper cars, 4 coach cars, an observation car which had a lounge in it, and finally, there's a dining car. There are 3 options when it comes to the Empire Builder. You can book a bedroom, a roomette, or a coach seat. Quick aside, there's a pandemic going on. Avoid touching surfaces where possible. Amtrak makes that easy. Okay, so you can book a bedroom like we did, or a roomette, or a coach seat. Roomettes and bedrooms are in sleeping cars like this one. These are bedrooms along the side here. There are roomettes on either side of this car. Let's take a look inside one. Now back to it. Here's a coach car. We'll take a closer look at Coach in just a little bit later on in the journey. For now, let's keep on going all the way up to the dining car. When it came to dining, things have changed at Amtrak. Rather than the typical, luxurious dining experience where you never know who you'll meet, you only sit with the people you're traveling with and you can only order from the flexible dining menu. Unfortunately, these really appear to be microwavable TV dinners. To compensate for the change, passengers get one free drink, a gin and tonic for me, and a glass of wine for the creative director.
Cheers! Here's to a great ride.
As you can see, the food wasn't exactly the famous steak Amtrak passengers have grown accustomed to. But these are unique times and changes are to be expected.
I've moved on to the spoon for my meatballs because my fork is a casualty of the sturdiness, I guess you'd say, of the meatballs.
Sure, the meatballs may have been sturdier than expected, but the view's more than made up for it. Also, we had to stop for a little bit. Apparently our train had been struck by lightning during a storm. Is that common? If you know, leave me a comment below. After dinner, we headed back to the end of the train before returning to our room, which had been turned down for bed. As you can see, there was plenty of room for the two of us. The space felt very cozy and, perhaps most importantly, incredibly private. And we crossed the mighty Mississippi before crawling under the covers.
It's pretty much time for bed. I mean, it's only 8:30, but we've been going for a long time, so time for bed. The sheets, if you think they're Egyptian cotton, you're living in denial.
And after recovering from laughing at my own stupid joke, we had time to take in even more views before drifting off to sleep. The sun rises early over North Dakota in July, and I'm so glad I didn't miss it. It was truly stunning. But waking up wasn't really too difficult.
No doubt that's a beautiful sunrise out there, and definitely a treat. I would not call that the most restful sleep I've ever had in my life. I mean, there were moments that were nice where it was like gently rocking. But there were other times where it felt like we were going to fly off the rails. I know that's crazy. I know there's no way that would have happened, but we're at the very tail end. It felt like we were whipping around these. Well, I mean, whatever. It was very nice. Will I do it again? I mean, yeah.
Of course, that wasn't exactly what happened, and looking back on it, the feeling wasn't as dramatic as perhaps I was indicating. In normal times, there would be coffee waiting outside our room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But again, these are not normal times. So, we headed back to the dining car for breakfast and some caffeine. Shortly after I'd finished my Jimmy Dean's sausage biscuit, a reminder of Saturday mornings growing up, it was time for a smoke break, which the conductor made a bit more PG by calling it a fresh air break. We got out of the train for our first visit to Minot, North Dakota. Minot traces its founding to 1886 when the first railroad track was laid here. It's perhaps best known as the home of rapper Wiz Khalifa and this train station. Sadly, the in popular culture section of the city's Wikipedia page is blank, so maybe its feature in this YouTube video will garner a reference?
Some say, why go to Minot, North Dakota? I say, why not?
In all seriousness, this stop did give us a chance to get a sense of just how big the train is. This was also a fuel and water stop. Passing between cars while the train is running requires some getting used to. Here, outside the train, you can see how they connect to each other. Soon, the train's whistle blew and the conductor called all aboard, so we returned to our room. The Empire Builder traces its heritage back to 1929, when it was the flagship route of the vaunted Great Northern Railway. In the early part of the 20th century, railroad companies were the airlines of their time. Perhaps none were as storied as the Great Northern Railway, which operated between St. Paul, Minnesota and Seattle, Washington. The Great Northern Railway operated the northernmost transcontinental railway in the country and was also the only privately funded transcontinental railroad in the nation's history. Unlike every other one, it was built with no federal funding. Today, Amtrak is the only passenger operator on the route, and as with nearly all of Amtrak's operations, we constantly competed with freight traffic, and freight trains, they always win. Why? That's because freight lines own the track. Amtrak is just borrowing it, in most cases. So that means delays are very possible. Fortunately for us, though, we didn't really experience any during our 30 hours on board. There's a unique quirk to the Empire Builder train. It splits in two. When the train reaches Spokane, Washington, the front half of the train, which includes the dining car, heads on to Seattle. The back half continues on to Portland, Oregon. That's the half with the observation car, which also houses the lounge. Now, this is where we were. This is a bit tough to articulate, but stick with me, it could save you $1 or $2. We were getting off at Glacier National Park before the train splits. However, by booking our ticket on the Portland part of the train, we saved money. Granted, we were at the very back, but walking through the cars is kind of a highlight, so it was money well saved. Put another way, check your fare on the very well-made Amtrak website before booking.
Pardon the interruption, rail runners, but this is big news. We've just crossed the border with Montana, making this my 48th state. Still need to visit Vermont and Idaho, but pretty exciting for me. Now, back to your regular programming.
We soon arrived at Wolf Point, and it was time for lunch. So we headed back to the dining car for another microwaved meal. After lunch, we decided to hang out in the observation car. I went downstairs to the lounge to get a drink. Again, social distancing measures were in place, so the experience isn't quite what Amtrak regulars are used to. But at the risk of beating a dead horse, the views are the same. At one point, we had to pull off on a siding because a dispatcher had allowed too many trains at once. It took about 10 minutes and gave us time to appreciate the simple beauty around us. The train had to reverse in order to return to the main track, but again, it wasn't much of a delay. Amtrak offers a great tool on their website called Track a Train. Using it, we realized we'd be meeting the other Empire Builder soon. That's the one headed back to Chicago, and we thought there was a chance we could capture video of it. This is one of the greatest things about the train, I think anyway. It's the pace. It allowed us to get excited about something simple and rewarding, and seeing the train heading back was great. As we made our way across Montana, the 5th state we'd seen so far, we passed through yet another storm. But it cleared quickly, and we learned why this state is known as Big Sky Country. We then discovered an empty coach cabin, so I used the opportunity to explore this mode of travel in a little bit more depth. It was similar to what I experienced the very first time I ever took Amtrak. That was between Washington, D.C. and my home in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'll provide a link to that video in the description. The seats offer plenty of recline, there's more than enough storage. There's also shared bathrooms that include thoughtful signage. As the afternoon progressed, the terrain grew more varied. Soon, the Rocky Mountains would appear, and our train would climb all the way up to Glacier National Park, where there were 3 stops. We got off on the 3rd one, and I'm so glad we did. This was by far the most beautiful part of the journey. I've been on this train for like 28 or 29 hours now, so I probably need a shower. Am I going to take one here? And the answer's no. I'm going to wait until I get to the hotel. We arrived at East Glacier Park, which was closed when we passed through. Soon, our final Amtrak meal arrived. We'd chosen to have it delivered as room service, which was a nice change of pace. It was packaged very well, but underneath that packaging, it was still microwaved. Thankfully, these meatballs weren't as sturdy as the last set. I've heard this part of the United States referred to as flyover country, and nothing could be further from the truth. I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet. I pinch myself every time I think about this. I've had the good fortune to visit 60 countries, set foot on all 7 continents. I've circumnavigated the planet half a dozen times. Now, before this trip, if you'd given me the choice of remaining in the United States or traveling abroad, I'd have been more likely to pull out my passport than my car keys. However, this Amtrak experience changed my perspective. Now, there were times we felt like we were outside the United States, particularly here in Montana, when we passed through towns like Malta, Glasgow, and Kremlin. And I'm sorry to admit it, that if it hadn't been for the closing of international borders, I probably would not have taken this trip. If I'd had the chance to visit North Korea, Northern Ireland, or Norway, I never would have woken up in North Dakota. And of course, I'm eager to continue exploring other countries and cultures and look forward to the reopening of our borders. But I'm also looking forward to finding more views like these in my own country. From Minnesota's Lake Country to the Missouri Plateau of North Dakota and the glacier-carved mountains of Montana, this is some of the most beautiful land anywhere. And it's just impossible to appreciate it from 34,000 feet hurtling through the air at 500 miles an hour. Only on a train can you sit back, have a drink, and really take in the specialness of these places. We saw all kinds of wildlife, like hawks and bald eagles and ducks, foxes, deer, and even antelope. This was truly a magical experience. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. In the next video, I'll share the remarkable experience we had in one of America's greatest treasures.
I'm Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com. Between now and the next time, see you on the rails.